Happy New Year, everyone. This is our first meeting of 2026 and excited to hear from one of our ambassadors and someone who's inspired us for a long time with his Aurora creative ideas and to hear more about his project and camera work with the Aurora project. Yeah, I'll just let you add more, Jeremy. But thank you so much to everybody.
Hey, thank you. Happy New Year, everybody. I guess I'll share my screen. I'll just check that I have the permissions to do it. It says the host is not allowing multiple presenters sharing for this meeting, so I guess somebody's already sharing.
In just a moment. I don't think I'm sharing.
But there still could be a different setting of to
Yeah,
allow.
I've set the settings, so you should be able to do it now.
Okay, perfect. I got it. Okay, how are we with being able to see the screen or the presentation first page?
Looks fantastic. Thank you.
All right, cool. Uh, so this is my little update on Aurora. I believe about 15 minutes, maybe a bit more. But please feel free to ask questions during these slides or come up with ideas or blurt out things or whatever. I'd like it to be, as interactive as possible. There's a few QR codes throughout as well. So so you don't have to take notes, you can just take pictures of those QR codes to get the links. The very first one is just to the Aurora web page that gives updates and appropriate links and so on. So yeah, the Aurora is a portable all-sky imager project that I've been working on along with some amazing citizen scientists, participatory researchers who've offered to host these cameras in their diverse geographic locations and offer their local skills and insights and special capabilities to making the project find some interesting things in the Aurora. So we'll give you a little bit of an update of what's been going on in the last year or so of the project. The first thing you'll see there is a little picture on the right. That's from Donna's home province, or Donna's province of residence right now in Manitoba. And that's the south shore of Lake Manitoba, which is a rather gigantic lake. And that's one of the later Aurora units capturing some pictures after a fairly large storm. I think this was October 13th or so, but please, no, my mistake, November 13th, 14th. And what you'll notice is it's just sitting on the beach on little legs. And that's one of the little improvements that we've tried to make this year rather than it being on a tripod. So we'll get a little bit more into, what is an all sky camera for this application and what are the things that we found important versus what things can we uh, de-emphasize in terms of setting things up. What assumptions can we dispose of, and what surprises did we come across? All sky imagers capture the entire sky at once. There's nothing that they miss because they look from horizon to horizon, north, south, east, west, and it's projected basically as a circle, as if you're looking straight up. The center of the image is directly above you, the zenith, and the horizon is a circle around the edge, is the circumference around the edge of that circle. And generally, these cameras are capturing time-lapse imagery, say every 1 second, 2 seconds, 5 seconds, and putting these together into time-lapse imagery. So in a series of time-lapse imagery, say 5,000 images in a night, you're capturing the entire sky at a location, and you're capturing it for the entire night of aurora, or for however long the aurora operator is out doing their own photography. The other thing is it's portable too, so it's designed to go with the aurora chasers, so they know how to get out from under clouds. They know when to stay in and stay warm. They know when a good storm is coming up. And they also know their local conditions because the aurora do differ uh, depending where you are. And so the local knowledge and gut feel and learnings of aurora chasers really matters when it comes time to capture a good observation. So these are 6 examples of what some citizen scientists have captured, including here today, Vincent and Donna from Manitoba, from Alberta, from Fairbanks over the last years. So this is an experimental, high resolution, low cost, time and location calibrated RGB, red, green, blue, meaning full color, time-lapse all-sky imager. And it's designed to be rapidly deployed and provide consistent data. So since all the units are the same, that means any operator who takes one of these out to the field will get a similar type of data to another operator somewhere else in the world. That consistency really helps for aligning both with other scientific imagery and also between the Aurora cameras. So it's just a very abridged list of all the people that have contributed, provided ideas, taken cameras out, um, published uh, published work that reference the Aurora. It's been wonderful. Although this talk is a little bit about hardware and software and the Aurora, it's really about the people. And so thank you everybody who's provided inspiration, support, guidance for operating these cameras and just the sort of journey we've been on together in the last few seasons. So this Aurora project really came from me being an Aurora chaser and missing half the fun, meaning you've got a bunch of cameras and you spend all your time pointing them in various directions as an Aurora chaser. And no matter what direction you point them, you're missing something behind you. And then you realize you've captured the whole night on camera, but you never took your eyes off the back of the camera. So did you really see the Aurora? You missed out a bit. And that's really where this project kind of came about, is I wanted a camera that was capturing everything. So sometimes I could just relax and enjoy what I was seeing. I noticed a lot of other people had different ways of capturing the Aurora, uh, and that they really understood their geographic locality, when to get the best imagery. And it seems like magic. You think, oh, if I go to a certain geographic location, I will definitely see the Aurora, because you see that from the people that know when to go out and when to stay home. And it's not necessarily that way in reality. If you look at all sky camera networks, even just showing weather in various parts of the world, most of the time it's underwhelming, cloudy, covered in spider webs, whatever the case. You're really trying to capture the best stuff at the best time. That's why it matters to have a citizen scientist who knows their local territory the best for aurora chasing, to deploy these units while they're out capturing the aurora. And that's why these are portable, and very easy to set up and deploy. And the goal is to coordinate with the research community to get data sets and share this full sky auroral phenomena with the public as well. And we'll talk about that a little bit further on. So it's really leveraging know-how and giving a commonality of tool that they can take out and capture the whole sky. This problem of missing what's over your shoulder, Neil Zeller called it the over-the-shoulder problem at a recent workshop, and I thought that was an appropriate name for it. You're always missing what's over your shoulder behind you. The other thing that has been noted is that some wonderful pictures of very interesting phenomena have been captured by citizen scientists, photographers, and participatory researchers, but the specific time and location isn't necessarily recorded of their image, which makes it difficult to synchronize with other scientific data, for example, satellite overhead passes, nearby instrumentation. So these kinds of requirements, bridging the gap between scientific imagery and what sort of artistic photographers might capture. There's something that meets in the middle, if you imagine it like a Venn diagram. And that's where this is trying to be. We want to have the GPS time and location locked down with a GPS receiver inside the aurorae. We want it aligned in roll, pitch, and yaw so that it's nice and level, that the zenith is directly overhead for consistency, always the same camera, the same lens, low cost, off the shelf, and manufacturable, meaning you can make many of these because the strength of a network is the number of nodes in a network. And also something that's simple to operate, portable, quick to set up, and really gets out of the way of the photographer. Um, they'd be operating these sort of as a contribution to citizen science. So they don't want to be spending all their time, say, on a vacation or on a trip to Iceland, for example, or even a trip to their backyard, setting up and tearing down a piece of equipment. It should just be set it up and let it do its thing. So that really defined what this project should be able to do. So here's how it works. You maybe set it up on a tripod or just set it on the beach like we saw in the first image. You align it with a built-in accelerometer for roll, pitch, and yaw. It's basically just a digital bubble level to make sure it's pointing straight up. Then you press start. And then you forget about it for the rest of the night while you work all your other artistic cameras. You have fun, you talk to your friends, you get hot chocolate, whatever the case. Or you leave it out for most of the night and come back in the early morning. Then you press stop. And back when you get to your home base, whether that's your home or your hotel or whatever the case, you press the upload button and those images are automatically processed into a time lapse and put on a YouTube channel. If you want to monitor it while it's taking photos, it also has a little phone web page that you can see in the bottom left that shows you what it's seeing at any given time. And this turns out to be really useful because in some places where you capture the aurora, you're also getting really cold and you may be in your car warming up and you want to know when to get out and uh, activate your other cameras or what direction to point them. So it kind of acts like a sentry that you can monitor from your car and know when to go out and rearrange your cameras or set them to a different cadence or something. So it also acts independent of the internet as its own Wi-Fi access point, sort of like when you go to the airport and log into their Wi-Fi. And you can also control it with that web page. The output is from a consumer camera, so it's high resolution. It's 4,000 by 4,000 pixels on a 24 millimeter sensor. So that's somewhat close to what a lot of Aurora chasers use, like full frame cameras to get their dramatic pictures. It is consumer RGB, meaning you're not separating your channels. You're using a single sensor that's split into tiny little squares alternating between red, green, and blue that's interpolated into color later. And you'll see the visualization there is kind of a circular keogram around the edge, which looks like an iris, hence the name Aurorae, and then the corresponding full sky image right in the middle for that given slice of the eye around. So that's just sort of an artistic way of combining two standard visualizations that are used for all sky networks. So we see on the left, captured by, I think, Andy Whitman. There's a Steve towards the just about overhead, a little bit south, that turns a bit red on the right-hand side that I thought was rather interesting. And Donna captured these pulsing aurora back in 2024. I've just put these in animated GIFs that are bouncing back and forth, but I thought there are two very unique examples of the kind of, even in a quiet night where you can see the galaxy, there's still a lot of interesting phenomena at longer exposures. And then on the right, with a much higher cadence, you can capture some of these transient phenomena like pulsing aurora. These have been
So,
deployed.
excuse me, that outer edge is just one stripe across that you've time stamped then? Is that
Yeah, I think the
how?
best way to think of it's a standard visualization called a keogram. And the way the keograms work is they want to have a single image that takes a sample of every frame in a time lapse. You can quickly glance at them and see where the substorms were, where the different phenomena took place in time. So if you think of it like a bookshelf, it's like the spines of the books, but the books are each a frame of the time lapse. You're looking at them almost edge on. So it's a slice north to south vertically across the middle of each full frame. And then those are arranged next to each other from left to right, going from earlier in the night to later in the night.
Okay, north to south. That was what I was wanting. Yes, thanks.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that typically, oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. I was going to add like the one on the left, I think is a little clearer, right? Because you can see it starts whatever time it starts at the bottom of the image, and then it goes around, and the time of the Steve is the video time that you have highlighted. The one on the right is playing both backwards and forwards during this more active time, right? So it's a little more different than we might be used to thinking of, I think. Because you can see the like lighter bar, that's the time that you're highlighting within there. I don't know if that helps at all.
The the
The lighter
Wikipedia,
bar on the keyogram shows where you are in the progression of the.
there's a really good article in Wikipedia about how keyograms are derived from all sky imagery in the context of aurora. And it has some good graphics in there too. Uh, for sort of a more in-depth explanation, I think it's a good article to check out. So if you just look up keogram, Keo gram for Wikipedia, it has that good illustration of how they're generated. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, please, anybody, feel free to ask questions or ideas, whatever the case, during the presentation. So yeah, we've distributed these from my hometown in Halifax on the east coast of Canada, all the way up to Vincent, taking them up and around Fairbanks and even further afield uh, in Alaska and as far down as Minnesota, and then um, across this continent, I guess. And shortly they'll be going. A few of them will hopefully be going to other continents as well. So we've captured quite a few imagery, or a lot of imagery over the last season during a lot of active nights. And what's key is that unlike a network where the cameras are always photographing, whether they're covered in snow, rain, there's cloudy conditions, it's daytime, whatever the case, I've found that because these are triggered by the aurora chasers when they're going out, the quality and the density of good data is really high. It's almost, I guess you could say 100%. They're only taking pictures when things should be imaged, I guess, or when there's something worth imaging. And so sort of the hit rate is rather high compared to automated systems that are just always out there. There's some applications for something like this. What would you do with a portable ASI all sky imager? Some of the things that have come across as ideas is co-location or coordination with other instruments or other aurora chasers. Most commonly, that's with the other aurora chasers or the aurora chasers' other cameras or groups of them. But it might also be co-location with different kinds of instruments. For example, there's a project using the GPS and cell phones to determine electron density locally, and the aurorae could be co-located with these to see if there was an optical correlation with what was seen by the GPS. Multiple cameras can, of course, do triangulation. Their coverage can overlap to make sort of a meta instrument that has a larger coverage if they're set a few hundred kilometers apart, either vertically in like latitude or across longitude. You could have impromptu networks set up. They've been used for event monitoring to some degree. There's a little example of a rocket launch there, but that's one example. And there's other imagers that could be, or other kinds of lenses that could be used. So you could, for example, swap out the all sky lens for a very narrow angle lens looking straight at the zenith if that's something you wanted to look at. So there are a lot of ideas and applications, and I'm open to more. And it's really kind of a platform that is adaptable to a lot of missions and ideas, and those ideas can be crazy and far-fetched, but they could be tried. Why not?
Jeremy, can I ask a question? The one you've demonstrated some of these. Have you demonstrated the impromptu sky coverage in new locations or the overlap of have like multiple auroras been operating at the same time and overlapping?
Not that I know of. No.
Okay.
Yeah. Be nice. I'm willing to try it. Yeah. So that again, that's the sort of the human factor, the human component of this is um, picking aurora chasers who are geographically appropriately located, and then coordinating them going out on a good night uh, and seeing what happens, I guess. And certainly that really requires, to have a lot of these cameras out, and that's something that I'd like to achieve is getting a lot more of these cameras out the door. And we'll talk about that shortly, but yeah, it really comes down to numbers of cameras out there. So that would be a great goal to have, I think.
Jeremy. It's Josh here. It's good to see you as a moving object. What's the fastest possible frame rate you can get from these sensors? I mean, ignoring whether you're getting enough light into the instrument.
These are consumer off-the-shelf cameras that also have a movie mode with very high ISO gain. If they were configured rather than capturing time-lapse imagery at, say, a standard cadence of 1 or 2 or 3 seconds, and instead configured to capture 12 or 24 frames a second as video, that would be something that would be possible with the hardware, and you'd just be changing the settings in the camera and perhaps some of the recording code as well. But you would be recording movie snips at that point and then offloading those as opposed to just sending a very high cadence of still images. So I think the limitations are those of the consumer camera, and the consumer cameras, I think Vincent does this quite a bit, taking video with these type of Sony cameras or similar types of sensors at 12 to 24 frames per second, ISO 56,000 or higher. And
Yeah.
the all-sky lens we're using is an f2, so I think it's bright enough to support something at that high of a cadence. You'd be beholden, of course, to the compression algorithm in the camera, though, in terms of its video compression. So
it does a hardware compression. You don't ever store just raw numbers.
yeah, we can talk about that certainly in a couple slides I have.
Okay.
There's
Yeah.
the option for capturing the raw imagery. I would like to explore that. I think there's the possibility of just simply finding a middle ground. These use electronic shutters, so there's no mechanical limitation on frame rate. But it's always worth exploring because it's a consumer camera, we'd hope to explore all the different capabilities that it can offer, but doing that in a more coordinated and calibrated way. So if there's a specific requirement, we can do some quick experiments and see if it's possible in terms of the data format, in terms of the cadence, and so on. I'd be happy to talk about it.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, and that's exactly the thing is, there's so many things that can be done, and I don't know where necessarily the next thing to focus on is, and having use cases and ideas really drives what software gets written, what capabilities get explored next. So I really appreciate that kind of feedback from everybody. Here's an example of what you might capture on the left with your own camera if you're an Aurora chaser, and this was me in Yellowknife. I missed a good part of a Steve, which is a little bit uncommon up that far north, but also under those geomagnetic conditions. But I did notice it and spun my camera around to capture a subset of it. And I didn't have the clock set properly on the camera. However, I did have an Aurora there, and it did have the proper coordination of time, location, and captured the whole phenomena from start to finish, as well as another one a little while later. And not only did it provide information about this phenomena, which was looked into by Dr. Bea Gallardo-Lacourt and her team, it provided value to the other cameras that were around it by getting them to synchronize in time, getting them to essentially all synchronize in their time, and you could relate them back to viewpoint. And it also informed them to look back at real scientific all sky imaging network that probably captured the phenomena, but they may not have known to look, except that somebody was operating an aurorae, saw something that they knew was odd and reported it. And so it acted as a multiplier for all the cameras around it, scientific and artistic. And that's another benefit of this. If you have people that are picking just the right time to look and know when they're seeing something strange, it's that local pattern recognition that really helps zero in on those new phenomena. So where are we going with this in terms of the design and deployment? Well, you can actually see inside one here. This one is in my garage right now. It's acting as kind of the prototype for all the others that I'm assembling right now, and a few others have been shipped. This is a 3D printed case, and it's kind of like a stack of bento boxes, I guess. Each layer of this stack has a different function, whether it's the battery, whether it's the electronics, or the camera and the GPS. These are all 3D printed, and at the very top is this consumer camera and the GPS. So 3D printed because it's a very specific use case. In the past, I've used other kinds of off-the-shelf cases, but they never really met our requirements. This one, for example, now it's 3D printed, so it's very durable for cold weather. But it also acts like a thermos bottle. It has an outer and inner wall with a 10 millimeter gap in between with very little infill, meaning one of the big problems taking these cameras out at -20 or -30 is the health of the battery in those cold conditions. By putting all the electronics at the bottom and letting it percolate upwards through these bento boxes and out the camera lens like a chimney, we're harnessing all the heat generated by the electronics and the processor to heat the parts that are most vulnerable to cold and to frosting. So that's the advantage of using 3D printing, is you get to take advantage of your hardware as much as possible. This year, we've switched to using lithium iron phosphate power banks because lithium ion batteries are just not good in the cold. These are better. We found a good source for them, and they've got sufficient lifetime to get through a whole night, multiple thousands of exposures. Because this is 3D printed, all we have to do is send the STL file to somebody and they can print their own, and they can buy the camera and assemble it themselves if they want to. And all the software is written in Python, which is kind of, I don't know, maybe a lingua franca for both students and researchers, and plugs into a whole bunch of other libraries of capability. And that includes the image processing pipeline, which we'll talk about shortly. You'll also notice it's transparent, and that's the artistic part of this. Although it's pointing straight up, and the top of the camera is black to prevent any light pollution. I've noticed that people trip over these things when you set them up in the field. It's a tripod, it's dark, there's a lot of aurora chasers potentially. They kick your tripod and ruin your time lapse. It's a very pragmatic thing, but it happens all the time. Or you forget where you put it out on a frozen lake and you're trying to recover it at 5 a.m., you're tired and cold, and you simply can't find your own camera. So this allows you to see all the LEDs, all the different colors of lights that are emitted by everything from the GPS to the power systems. And you can tell very quickly where the unit is, and you can tell what the status is of it without having to do a whole bunch of complicated interface lights or anything like that are drilled through the case. But also it just kind of looks like the aurora captured in a bottle. So that's I guess, a conceit towards the artistic aspect of these things. And it has kept people from getting too close to them or pushing them or moving them around in the past where they've been set out. They realize, oh, this is an instrument capturing something. I should let it be. So that's the human factor. I've set up a little assembly line right now because there's some that are spoken for deployment. Before, I was sponsoring everything myself, and that was getting a bit expensive. What we found is that there's a lot of people who are willing to purchase the camera that this is standardized around. because it's so useful, even if it's not used in Aurora, it can be used for other things, or if they get bored of it, they could say resell it. This way, the operator of the Aurora owns the camera. They buy the lens for it, which is about $150, and they buy the battery for it. And these are all designed to very quickly kind of Lego into the Aurora shell, which is what I manufacture and send out to them. That way, the operator owns the images, and I sort of have a license to use the images. And it's a much more collaborative and sustainable model. If you look at the graph on the bottom, a lot of the price of this is just the camera, and the rest of it is things that I can support, like say the GPS sensors and the computer and maintaining the software. So it's an idea of collaboration that makes it possible to get more of these out with people willing to participate in a sustainable way, because otherwise we'd have to look for funding to purchase these cameras, and then yeah, that's a different kind of model. So when you're self-funding something, it helps when you can find where to focus your strengths and where to let your collaborators focus their strengths. In this case, they're already photographers potentially, or organizations that can acquire a camera and a battery and a lens. They're all things that can be ordered off of Amazon or from their local camera shop. And then they just slip it into this and it gets that new capability. We've revised the visualization pipeline this year. This is going back to the Kiagram that Patricia, I believe, mentioned. That this Kiagram now rotates around the central image, and that's just to kind of reflect back on the idea of a clock. So the Kiagram at the very top at the 12 o'clock position, that's the frame you're looking at in the all sky image directly below it. The other thing we've done is put in the cardinal directions. A lot of people don't know if there's an east or west, or versus a west or east convention in all sky imagery. Some are flipped, some aren't. It's not intuitive, surprisingly. So this way it's sort of defined clearly. And I've rewritten, previously I've used off-the-shelf video processing software that's basically nodes and processing nodes connected together with the lines. Then it'll say, take in this image, add it to a time lapse, adjust the gamma, output it. This I've rewritten in Python, so it's fully automated and it's all of our code now. You're not relying on any other software from another vendor. What that allows you to do is just automatically generate these directly from Google Cloud. So when a operator gets back at the end of the night and presses the offload button, those images, once they're offloaded into Google Cloud, are automatically processed based on their metadata. And there's, I think, one manual step to ensure that the top of the image is magnetic north or south, depending what hemisphere it is. It's automatically processed, all the frames are generated, and it's uploaded to the corresponding YouTube channel for quick reference. Josh, I think this goes back to what you're mentioning earlier is what kind of data can we get off this? It's a consumer camera, so it shoots in a compressed format like JPEG, where there's a lot of black box image compression that we don't necessarily know about. That's actually desirable in one way for us, in that we're expecting citizen scientists to upload 5,000 pictures in a night. If those pictures are large, that could be 100 gigabytes a night on, and that's too much of an ask for most people's internet connections. So having a very compact format that's still high resolution is desirable. So we've been using JPEGs for the most part. However, I don't find that sufficient. I've always wanted to do raw imagery, which works out to about 25 megabytes an image. So at 5,000 images a night, you can imagine that it's not really sustainable at, say, 125 gigabytes a night if my math is right. So I'm rewriting a raw converter, meaning we're taking the direct pixel data off of the camera without letting the camera do any interpretation of it, and then we're interpreting it ourselves. And you can see the steps here. Number one is just what is actually happening in the physical world. Number two is how the imager sees that. And you'll see it's kind of this checkerboard of black and white. Even color cameras are black and white imagers at their heart, but they have different colored filters over them. And you can see that in number three. There's just like looking at a TV in the old days, very close, you'll see red, green, and blue color filters over each pixel so that their grayscale value is not how gray something is, but say how green something is or how red something is, like that red flower just over here. The camera then, or the image processing does some magic to interpolate the missing colors, and it comes out with a slightly blurrier image if you really zoom in, and tries to recreate the original color image. So we want to rewrite this pipeline so that we're grabbing just what we need to without letting the camera introduce any black box magic. And then we can say, ask a university student or a researcher, hey, could you characterize the original raw imagery for light intensity for frequency response? And they can do that with this original raw imagery, and that gives it potentially more scientific value because you could say this is the absolute brightness level that it captured, or this is the color response it captured in this frequency. That's something you can't do if you're letting the camera do magical black box color generation. This is really what I've been looking at in the last few weeks, and I'm open to ideas on how best to manage this new pipeline, but I want it to run in parallel with the JPEG pipeline so that we can have both kinds of data available. That's something possible now. It's just we always have to balance what somebody can collect and upload versus what is practical to catch. Because as we know, we can all generate way too much imagery and then we never look at it or never know where to find it again. That's sort of the double-edged sword of Aurora photography. Some other requests have been about, can we leave this out for more than a night? Right now it's designed to go out with an Aurora chaser. So rather than redesign the whole thing, let's just put a coat on it. Since we go out in the cold and we put on a coat, why shouldn't this have a coat? So this would include an acrylic dome and an outer shell that's designed for exterior power instead of batteries, and maybe a network connection into the side, like Ethernet. So that would just make it more robust to be left out in the field for, say, a few days or longer. That's still a work in progress. It really comes down to whether somebody sees the immediate need for it, whether we continue developing in that direction. Going in the opposite direction of making it bigger, let's make it smaller. This is the Aurora Mini. It's based around a much smaller sensor and a smaller computer and smaller battery pack. And here it is capturing some red aurora at a very low latitude, just over my house, actually. And I find that this captures the heart of what is this unit really for? It's designed to contextualize the other cameras around it because it is capturing time-stamped full sky imagery, maybe not at the higher resolution and quality of the other aurora, which is bigger, but it gives that, it allows you to synchronize any other cameras that are around it. And since it is just basically a little cheeseburger camera, I've even left it on the top of the car while driving around in Aurora chasing. You can just leave it out in the backyard for a night and see what you're going to capture. See, I thought it was a cloudy night and there wouldn't be anything. Instead, I captured red aurora and a big substorm right over top of a low latitude location. And that also informed me, since I was monitoring it with my phone in bed, to wake the heck up and go down to the beach and get some photography. And I may not have done that had I not deployed this little camera just to monitor things just in case. There's also collaboration with research organizations and with outreach and education. So here's some examples of that. I really appreciate anybody who reaches out and says, hey, I've got an idea of what we can do with this footage. And one example is because it's high resolution and because it is human consumable colors, very much you can project it into, say, a planetarium. And of course, all these are available publicly on a YouTube repository. So it's not some difficult to maintain, difficult to pay for repository that you have to do everything from scratch. You have the discoverability, you have the tagging, you have the metadata, all the strengths, even download and sharing snippets, all those strengths of YouTube are now available for free, and we're able to link these to other tools as a result. One example that YouTube gives you is a 3D view. So you can take that all sky imagery and use their 3D sort of VR engine, I guess you could call it, and convert it into a virtual planetarium. And you can replay it at any speed you want. I'm actually scrolling this right now. It's playing in the presentation if you can see it. And I've also added in the original all sky image down here and some thumbnails of how things are progressing over the night here. So it's an example that you can really take this type of imagery, and because it's high resolution, it gives you more flexibility in terms of presenting it, sharing it with the public. Dr. Ilko Dornbos, his space weather timeline viewer, he was very gracious in integrating YouTube videos into it, specifically Aurora, but now others too. So they appear time synchronized with whichever other space weather instrumentation you choose to show in time-based graphs at the bottom. And the strength of his space weather timeline viewer is you choose what data to show in what order. And you can kind of write a story of, in this case, magnetic disturbance right around a substorm. And his software synchronizes the YouTube video, in this case, Aurora, with the actual playhead of these magnetometers, for example. And that's really great for giving context. You can see I'm wiggling my mouse right over where there's a lot of magnetic disturbance, right when there's a substorm right overhead. And that magnetometer is somewhat co-located with the Aurora there. That's a really exciting project. And so I can just add in the videos and the appropriate synchronization data to his repository, and they automatically appear as part of the space weather timeline viewer. So his work on that and his team's work on it is just very inspiring, and it shows that there's the opportunity to collaborate across instrumentation and people and teams with this kind of collaboration. So what's next in terms of working together? As Josh mentioned, I'd love to determine more specific use cases. So these are capabilities, specific campaigns. As Liz mentioned, if there was the desire to have an overlapping network of cameras, and we had, say, the 3 right people in the right location willing to collaborate and host these, we could do that. That's part of building and deploying more units. I'd also really like to calibrate and characterize the consumer imaging pipeline. Once that's done once somebody has taken the raw image from a Sony camera and characterized it in terms of absolute brightness response across different wavelengths, or calibrated a lens to map its distortion parameters for all sky imaging, they can do it again and again, and we can start getting the entire library of consumer cameras, the people that are going out and capturing this imagery. And we know now that this red might mean this particular range of frequencies or this particular brightness, because we have a calibration library for scientific use of the most commonly used consumer Aurora cameras. And that can start with the one that's in Aurora potentially and move out from there. So that idea of calibration and characterization for some absolute values or approximation of those, I'd be interested in pursuing that. It'd be fun to have other people build these. There's some of that in progress now, but it would be an interesting student project. There's nothing here that requires anything except off-the-shelf work, soldering, 3D printing, a bit of UV glue and epoxy, and some photography skills. And I think it would be great for student groups at, say, the undergraduate engineering or science level, or even graduate level, to build and improve on these. There's also sensors in these cameras that have capabilities that haven't been tapped yet. The example of higher cadence frame rates or movie frame rates, or the idea that the GPS data, it's not just a clock, it can actually sense a lot more things. Like I think it's pseudo distance is one that was mentioned by some people at the Boston University as a potential measure. So you're getting more data from a GPS that can tell you more about the atmosphere that you are looking through, and having sort of a sensor fusion between the GPS receiver and the camera could be of benefit. There's also a magnetometer on board that's mainly for pointing the camera roughly north, but there's no reason somebody could not put a more sensitive magnetometer and co-locate it to have that data captured simultaneously. There's a lot of ideas, and I don't have I don't have the experience to know what those ideas could be or what to focus on now. So please feel free to approach me with interesting things to test or interesting ideas. And that's how the project has grown so far, and that's how I'd like it to continue to grow. So yeah, that's sort of the summary up until January 14th, 2026. And I hope that this year we can capture even more stuff from more continents, from more aurora chasers, and come up with more sort of serendipity, and maybe have some campaigns and coordination based around it, rather than just people going out when they think it's a good time to go out. Maybe we can get those networks deployed, or maybe we can do some work with other instrumentation, and have, like I said, something more like a campaign based around specific ideas or specific imagery you want to capture phenomena. So that's my little presentation for now. I'm happy to answer any questions either now or offline later on. Uh, yeah, thank you. I'll open it up to questions.
Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you for inspiring us with this and sharing so much with the community. It's really fantastic. Definitely, there's been an active chat here. You probably didn't see, but lots of questions. But I'll be quiet and let others pop up and ask their questions or comments. So I imagine there's a few out there.
Yeah, if somebody wants to sort of pick some questions from the chat, maybe, or if anybody just wants to ask any questions or have any comments, or you know,
Well,
let's
yeah,
see.
like I put in the comments, one of the things I do, of course, is eclipse chasing. Will it automatically change the exposure as the skies get darker, or what's the exposure range, and is it manual, or what do you do?
Right now it's set up for manual because we really need that consistency in cadence and exposure level, especially with Aurora that can change orders of magnitude in brightness. If we had auto exposure, it would be very apparent, I guess, in the time lapses. However, for something like an eclipse, I guess it's known that you're going to have to go across a large exposure range. And if somebody said, I'm going to ask you to put together an aurora for me or for our team, and we're going to fly it up to, I don't know, Iceland, and capture all sky imagery with it, but it has to have that automatic exposure, then we just sort of tweak the software so that it did have the appropriate automatic exposure capability. So because, yeah, the software is flexible, and the camera has that capability for auto exposure, we could give that a try. I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah, there's so many ideas you could pursue. It's my part of my question was based on, like the FAST satellite had years ago, it was a satellite to study the aurora. And what is a substorm, right? A substorm is sort of like a volcanic eruption. You have a relatively quiescent system overhead where you really don't need 10 frames a second to capture what's going on. And then suddenly this impulsive release of energy occurs, and you might ask questions like, gee, I wonder what, small scale structures are happening in the poleward expanding edge. And you might want to go to 100 frames a second for a brief period of time. I mean, I'm not saying that your current system should be able to do this. It's kind of a different project. And another aspect of that is if you really do want the high cadence view, you want to isolate the optical spectrum in terms of the prompt emissions and actually discard the red line and the green line. And there's some really cheap interference filter, not interference filters, dyed glass filters that can do that for you.
I think one thing
So the
that might
multi-scale, that's what I want to say really, is there's a multi-scale dynamic going on, and that you could imagine designing systems that are optimized to observe it.
I like that. One thing that makes me think of is the Aurora Mini uses a very small sensor that can be high cadence, and you could put a dichroic filter in front of it with narrow angle. And it's small enough to put in the same chassis as the Aurora. So you'd actually have two cameras inside the same chassis, one doing all sky imagery, maybe monitoring to see if there's a rapid onset of something with a basic image processing or image detection system. And that might trigger the recording of high cadence, high frame rate from the other camera that's in the same case. So kind of like combining those two cameras together into one and letting them focus on different capabilities. So yeah, I think that would be a really neat idea, is have wide angle RGB and then narrow angle, narrow spectrum in the same unit potentially, and one would inform the other. Somebody asked, what is the case made out of? That's a very good question, because we are dealing with -30, -40. Some plastics crack at that temperature. The one that I've found works well for this application right now is either ABS plastic, which is very difficult to 3D print for most people without a dedicated type of printer and appropriate HEPA filters, because it just releases a lot of off-gassing, or a very commonly used 3D printing filament called PETG, and it's the same thing that pop bottles are made out of. It's relatively durable, it's transparent, it glues up really well with all kinds of different adhesives, and it's dimensionally stable and very, very tough for even cold weather conditions. In fact, it gets stronger at cold weather conditions from some of the charts I've seen, depending how you decide to categorize stronger. So that's what it's all made out of. And some of the other components that are just black to block light are just printed from PLA, which is a very standard 3D printing material that's relatively stiff.
That's cool. Thank you, Jeremy. I've been printing a little bit, so I was curious
Oh,
about
wow.
that. Michael has a really good comment about his software updates as well in the chat there.
Yeah,
And
Michael, feel free to stay in touch. I'll send you whatever images you need. I was just doing some plate solving yesterday with Stellarium, so I'd be happy to. I'd like to do some plate solving, because what that can give me, and well, to give the project, I guess, but me out of my own curiosity, is I don't know the exact lens parameters of this wide angle lens. And that's very important to say, know how far the horizon really is away. You have to know those distortion parameters. So if I could figure out the distortion parameters of these lenses using some plate solving and work with you on that, I think that would be one very big part of the calibration that we were talking about earlier. Not the color part, but the geometry part.
I think my program would be able to do the full calibration without knowing any parameter of your camera.
Okay.
So I just have to pick some reference stars, and the program will completely do the distortion of the image without
Okay.
knowing any parameter.
Is it an 8mm or 6mm lens?
Oh, thank you for asking. It's a 6.5mm lens, which projects a approximately 4,000 by 4,000 pixel image on an APS-C, which is, I believe, 24mm area of sensor. So 24mm by 24mm just fits the image circle inside it at 6.5mm focal length. I believe that lens is a 190-degree field of view, but you're only using about 180 degrees of it ideally, but it's nice to be able to register the horizon as well. So
Yeah, it's nice to get some of the foreground as well.
yeah, a little bit of context, some trees poking out. Often you see the operator in the first few frames leaning over the unit to trigger it, so you get a little bit of a self-portrait, which is kind of fun too. But Yeah, it just speaks to, the consumer space has these amazing optics and sensors that if you were to buy them for astronomy purposes or for scientific imaging purposes, they're much lower production rates and therefore orders of magnitude more expensive. So it makes more sense to, as Michael said, calibrate the consumer stuff than increase the cost of the project so that it's not even tenable anymore by using sort of scientific grade lenses that have the calibration parameters provided. Uh, yeah, that's the strength of the community is everybody can pitch in with their particular specialty.
Jeremy, I'm gonna say, I'm gonna apologize. I have to leave early today or promptly now, but Laura's gonna stay on for anybody who wants to keep talking. And this was fantastic and wonderful, and I'm glad I got to squeeze it in amidst a bunch of meetings. So thank you all for everything you're doing to um, fit this in as well. So we'll talk to you guys soon.
Thank you so much for your support. And just looking to see if there's any other questions in the chat. Oh yes, Vincent's going to try and deploy it tonight. I guess it's going to be nice and warm in Fairbanks tonight.
Yeah, it was clear a couple nights ago, but it was like minus 42, 43 Celsius, so minus 45 Fahrenheit. Like at that point, I don't even want to go out aurora chasing, so I decided
Yeah.
to not deploy it. But yeah, tonight it looks good. So at least in my backyard, but I'm gonna have Andy take it otherwise because I have class tomorrow. So aurora chasing plus school, sometimes those two don't mix, but I want to get it out more this year.
When
Vincent,
it gets down to 50 in Houston, we all put on coats.
Yeah, I'm gonna be in Houston in a couple weeks for the AMS conference, so I might I might just be wearing a t-shirt the whole time.
Hey, come by. I'd love to see. I'd love to build one of these. What day? I mean,
The whole week, yep. I will send you an email. We can work something out.
yeah, we can try to figure out some time. Swing by. We could have a little Aurora party in our dome. I can take you all to the Museum of Natural Science and show you one of our inflatables and show some of these videos on our portable if anybody's interested.
actually, Patricia, if you want, we did with Vincent's help and Andy's help and Donna's help, their captures of Aurorae imagery. I put them together into a planetarium show that's been shown in a few locations. So it's basically just a movie file that I could provide to you. And I'd love to try it on an inflatable dome. So far, we've only tried it on the really big domes, but I think inflatables have much more, they're much more accessible to people. So if you're willing, I can send you the link to that video to try.
Yeah, send it to me. Well, if we do it at the museum, they can transfer fisheye to mirror on the fly. But if you send it to me or send me the link in advance, I can go ahead and pre-warp it. So our portables, we prefer not to do the reformatting on the fly because it slows everything down, and you just get a much better quality if you pre-warp it.
Okay.
Dr. Pat, can you put your email address in the chat for everybody? Because I think there's a couple of people who don't necessarily have it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that's really neat. I'm excited. I want one.
Yeah. Well, that's the other one element is having a specific camera for a specific aurora chaser, or as Vincent mentioned, a group in one geographic location who can kind of hand off to each other depending on their availability. In Canada, we have the Royal Astronomical Society in every major city and the small ones too, where it's the groups of astronomers, amateur astronomers work together. And they often have a equipment library where they can say, I'm not going to buy this particular type of imaging system, but I'm going to borrow it from the imaging library in my town. And I think that would be an interesting model for something like this, where, say, it was available at a university, ready to go, if somebody wants to take it out or repurpose it or use it or something like that. likewise, if you knew you were going to capture a once in a lifetime event and wanted to borrow one to put in the luggage and give it a shot, then that's something you can look at as well. This is really about the photographers and the citizen scientists. It's not about the hardware or the software or anything like that. It's the collaboration and the people, and it's just trying to enable them as much as possible.
Yeah, we did a fisheye sequence of the aurora and of the eclipse in 2017, and we tried it with just a fixed aperture, and it just went totally black. You did not see the corona. It just went black.
Yeah, it's amazing what the human eye can and can't see, and sometimes you're amazed by what your camera can capture, and sometimes you're stunned at how much it misses that your eye can capture too. So yeah, I'm happy to stay in touch and provide you the files and
Cool.
yeah, and thanks again to everybody who captured that imagery to enable that planetarium show too. That was an amazing thing to be able to put together.
Tell me about the rocket that made the spiral. The first time I saw that, I was just floored. I went, "What the heck was that?"
Oh,
It's in one of
Vincent,
your slides.
yeah, Vincent and I were testing. I believe Dr. Donald Hampton provided us some space to test an aurora up at Poker Flat under one of the imaging or instrumentation domes. And Vincent noted to me one night that they caught or potentially were going to catch, I can't recall at this time, feel free to correct me, the venting of a second stage of a rocket launch. I think it was a Falcon 9 that was flying basically from probably Vandenberg up across the West Coast over Alaska. And so it appeared as that galactic spiral. And we checked back in the data that we captured on the aurora that was being tested at Poker Flat. And sure enough, we had that sequence. And it's really kind of eerie and surprising to see such a gigantic, weird spiral shape. And it moves across the frame as well. I have some video of it I can share, I guess, or the time lapse from it. It's just a little bit surprising, but I think what that spoke to is two things: the idea of serendipity and coordination, but also the idea that if you know of a particular satellite flyover of another instrument or another imaging instrument, that can be calibrated with the aurorae, or the aurorae can be located underneath the flyover path of an instrument, whereas a fixed all sky network, you're kind of saying, well, you know, swarm A is 50 miles to the left. I guess the data is somewhat correlated. This way you can actually slide your aurorae with the appropriate operator directly under that hard to relocate instrument in orbit, for example, or say a fixed magnetometer station. That's another advantage, I think, of the potential of having portability and setting up impromptu networks. Yeah, I love these ideas. Thank you so much for sharing. I'll send you an email right afterwards, and Josh, if it's okay, I'd love to understand a bit more about what some of the capability requirements are for higher cadence imaging, and then see if something like this could potentially support that, either in a burst mode or some other image capture mode. It's always fun to push what the instruments can do, because being off-the-shelf consumer equipment, they don't always tell you all the capabilities and the caveats of what's possible if you're directly taking control of the camera. And there's some interesting surprises in doing that in terms of capability. And also any collaboration in data visualization, or say sharing this information with other people too. If people want to look at the YouTube channel and actually comment on specific phenomena at specific timestamps, I can put those into chapters in the descriptions. You can say, oh, there's pulsing aurora starting in this chapter, and then there's a SAR arc in this chapter of the video. And by annotating those videos on YouTube, they gain context and usefulness. And you could even link back to, say, other all-sky network cameras or something like that in those comments. So maybe that's another advantage of having a social network to post the videos on. And if anybody sees a particular frame or series of frames in the YouTube channel that they want to explore further, just drop me a note and I can send you the original data from those. Yeah. So yeah, that's why every frame has a image number associated with it. It makes it easy to retrieve, share, and work with the data. Yeah.
That sounds great, Jeremy. I'll definitely reach out to you soon. We can talk about some ideas.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I'm gonna peel off for now. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. And thank you so much, Jeremy, for a wonderful presentation. This is so cool and so exciting. And now I want to build one, even though I know that it's well beyond my capabilities. I'm still gonna try. It's gonna be great. But thank you so much for a great presentation and for a lively discussion, everybody. And we really appreciate your being here with us. Are there any other questions for Jeremy? No? All right. Well, we'll hope to see you guys in February on, I believe, Valentine's Day, as per usual, for another presentation. And I hope you have a wonderful time until then.
Thanks
Thanks so
everybody.
much.
Happy New Year.
Bye. Thanks again.
Happy New Year.
Bye.
Thanks all.
Bye, everyone.